At a primary school in Greenwood, something strange began to happen. A therapy dog entered the building for the first time to visit the students. More than 20 children were buzzing with excitement. They all wanted to play with him. Some were calling out to the dog. Others held out their hands, trying to get his attention. But the dog ignored them all. He walked slowly across the room, as if he were looking for someone specific. Then, he stopped, right in front of Ethan Miller, a 9-year-old autistic boy who almost never spoke to anyone. Without making a sound, the dog simply sat down next to him, and he stayed there. At first, everyone thought it was just a coincidence, but when it started happening every single week, an expert noticed something surprising. The dog wasn't just sitting next to Ethan, he was trying to help the boy, in a way that no one else had noticed. Ethan Miller was known at school for being very quiet. He almost never spoke. He preferred to stay at the back of the room, drawing or staring at the table. Too many children. Ethan seemed different. Some students didn't understand his behavior. Others simply ignored him. But Ethan didn't want to be alone. He simply experienced the world in a much more intense way. Loud noises, bright lights, many people talking at the same time. All of this could be overwhelming for him. That morning, the classroom at Greenwood Elementary School was noisier than usual. Teacher Emily Carter had organized a group activity. The children were excited, talking loudly, dragging chairs, and laughing as they worked. For most students, it was just another ordinary moment in class. But for Ethan Miller, it wasn't. The sounds began to blend together in his head. Voices speaking at the same time, the scraping of chairs on the floor, loud laughter echoing through the room. The bright ceiling lights seemed even more intense. Ethan tried to keep looking at the paper in front of him, attempting to ignore everything around him, but the noise only grew louder. His heart began to beat faster. His breathing became shallow. He felt his whole body tense, as if everything was pressing in on his mind at once. Then Ethan put his hands over his ears and squeezed his eyes shut, trying to block out the sounds. Some students started looking at him. A boy at the back of the room laughed, not understanding what was happening. Another whispered something to his classmate. Within seconds, Ethan could no longer control what he was feeling. It was a sensory crisis. "Teacher," Emily noticed immediately. She walked quickly over to Ethan and spoke to him in a low voice, asking the other students to be quieter. The room grew calmer, but the moment had already made everyone uncomfortable. For Ethan, it had been just another day when school seemed too big for him. After that episode, Teacher Emily Carter couldn't stop thinking about Ethan. She knew the boy was intelligent. Often when she reviewed his work, she noticed details that few other students picked up on. Ethan had a unique way of observing the world, but it was also clear that the school environment could be extremely difficult for him. Emily began talking to other teachers and the school administration about ways to help students who were experiencing anxiety or sensory overload. That's when someone mentioned something that some schools were starting to use: therapy dogs. These dogs were specially trained to work with children. They could perceive subtle signs of stress, anxiety, and fear, and help students feel safer and calmer. The idea seemed simple, but also uncertain. Would it work? Some teachers were curious, others weren't sure it would really make a difference. Even so, the school decided to try. They contacted a support program that worked with trained therapy dogs. A few days later, Emily received the news. The following week, a therapy dog named Buddy would visit the classroom for the first time. At that moment, no one imagined that this simple decision would completely change Ethan's story. The following week, excitement was high in the classroom. The children kept asking when the dog would arrive. When the door finally opened, a golden retriever calmly entered alongside his trainer. His name was Buddy. As soon as the children saw him, the room filled with excitement. Several hands shot up. Some children called out to the dog. Others tried to get closer to pet him, but Buddy didn't run toward them. He walked slowly around the room, observing each table, as if he were looking for something specific. Gradually, the noise died down. The students noticed that the dog seemed to completely ignore all the excitement. Then Buddy stopped, right in front of the desk at the back of the room. There sat Ethan Miller, silent as always, staring at his desk and trying to avoid the attention. Without hesitation, Buddy approached. He sat down next to the boy and calmly rested his head near his leg. For a few seconds, nobody said anything. The entire room fell silent. Teacher Emily Carter watched in surprise. Among more than 20 children trying to get the dog's attention, Buddy had chosen the one student that almost no one else noticed. At first, Ethan remained completely still. He wasn't used to being the center of attention. His eyes were fixed on Buddy, as if trying to understand what was happening. The dog, for his part, remained calm. He didn't bark. He didn't move much. He just stayed there, as if that was exactly where he should be. Some students started whispering. Others watched curiously. Teacher Emily observed everything attentively. Then something small happened. Very slowly, Ethan raised his hand. For a few seconds it hung in the air, as if he were still deciding what to do. Then, very carefully, he touched Buddy's head. The dog didn't move. He simply closed his eyes for a moment, as if he were comfortable. It was a simple gesture, but for those who knew Ethan, it was huge. It was the first time many students had seen Ethan reach out toward something or someone so spontaneously, and at that moment, something began to change in the room. The following week, Buddy returned, and he did exactly the same thing. Among all the children, he went straight to Ethan. Over time, something began to change. When Buddy was around, Ethan seemed calmer. His breathing became more even, and for the first time, some of his classmates saw Ethan smile. As the weeks went by, Teacher Emily Carter began to notice something she could no longer ignore. Every time Buddy visited, the same thing happened. Among more than 20 students, the dog always chose Ethan. It didn't matter where the boy was sitting. It didn't matter how many children called Buddy's name. The dog would walk around the room and end up in exactly the same spot, next to Ethan. At first, Emily thought it might be a coincidence, but after Buddy's 4th visit, she realized it seemed far more intentional. And Ethan was changing too. Before, he avoided contact. Now, whenever Buddy arrived, Ethan seemed more relaxed. His shoulders were less tense, his breathing calmer, and there was something Emily had almost never seen before. Ethan was smiling. It was a small, discreet smile, but it was genuine. Emily began to wonder whether Buddy was noticing something that the adults hadn't yet understood. Curious, she decided to consult the school administration. It was time to ask someone who truly understood animal behavior for their perspective. The school invited an animal behavior expert named Sarah Thompson. She watched Ethan and Buddy for a few minutes. Buddy was sitting calmly next to the boy. As always, after a short while, the specialist smiled. She already understood. The expert explained that therapy dogs are able to perceive very subtle signs of anxiety and stress changes in breathing, body posture, and emotional tension. Buddy had sensed that Ethan often felt overwhelmed in the school environment and, instinctively, chose to stay by his side to help him feel safe. He was drawn to Ethan's quiet need for comfort. Over time, Ethan's classmates began to grow closer to him at first, just to be near Buddy. But then they started talking to Ethan directly. They began to understand better who he was. Ethan started participating more in activities. For the first time, he was not completely alone. Months later, Ethan was different. He was still quiet. He still loved drawing, but now he had friends, and he felt more comfortable at school. It all started with a simple gesture. A dog that decided to sit next to him. Some people might think Buddy chose Ethan by chance, but the truth is, he sensed something that many others took a long time to understand, that Ethan didn't need to be fixed. He simply needed to be understood. And sometimes, the one who understands a silent heart isn't someone who talks a great deal. It's someone who simply decides to stay by your side. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, please consider sharing it and subscribing for more content.